Hello, and welcome to another edition of Sidebar. My name is Ben Johnson, the Executive Director of AILA, and I am joined here today by our outstanding Director of Government Relations, Betsy Lawrence.
Thank you.
So this has been another incredibly busy and confusing month for the issue of immigration. The termination of DACA has really dominated the headlines, and AILA has been doing a lot of great work in response to that. We've got a lot of great resources on our website to help members understand what's happening, and we've got a lot of valuable materials to help members navigate this really important issue. But today, we really want to spend a little time talking about some business immigration issues that haven't made a lot of headlines, but have certainly given AILA members and their clients a lot of headaches and a lot of anxieties. And it feels like the past 8 months have ushered in a whole new world order in the issue of, or on the area of business immigration. Mm-hmm. So I have Betsy here to discuss with us how the practice is changing, how AILA can be a resource for members who are navigating these changes, and the need to incorporate new approaches to casework in their practices. In your job as Government Relations Director, you do focus on the immigration benefits and employment-based immigration here at AILA. And you were in private practice in San Francisco for a long time.
Yep.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. Let's not talk about that, though.
So, Betsy, thank you very much for joining me here today. I know you really wanted to do an interpretive dance about this issue.
Yeah,
to help bring some levity.
I did, but then I just didn't have enough time to practice. Okay. So maybe we should just stick to the issues.
We'll play it straight.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to folks about some real serious issues. Mm-hmm. So tell me what's going on. How, in terms of the issue of business immigration issues, what does it look like from where you sit, and what do you think are some of the major challenges that we're facing?
Yeah, so thanks, Ben. There has been a lot that has been unpacked in the business immigration world over the last several months, and I want to kind of focus on 3 main points. And it's important to note that all of these things can be tied back to the executive orders. And interestingly, 3 different executive orders. So the first thing that members have been really struggling with is this whole concept of extreme vetting. And extreme vetting was introduced in the now infamous travel ban executive order. That concept was included in that executive order. And this new directive to require interviews for all employment-based adjustment of status cases is derived from that concept of extreme vetting. So that's actually, as we know, is not going to be rolled out until October 1st. We're still waiting for a lot of the details as to what that's going to look like, but that's certainly something that is going to be a big change in the business immigration world. Secondly, and probably the most obvious one, is the Buy American, Hire American executive order. Right. And a lot of our members, as we now know, are struggling with these RFEs that are questioning the use of a level 1 and now in some cases level 2 wage on the labor condition application. And this new area can be tied directly to that Buy American, Hire American executive order. For those of you who haven't read it recently, just as a quick refresher, it mentioned or directed the agencies to specifically review all of the non-immigrant visa programs to make sure that U.S. jobs, that the immigration system is executed in such a way that the interests of U.S. workers are protected. And then it specifically called out the H-1B program, and with a directive to ensure that H-1Bs are awarded to the highest paid and the most skilled beneficiaries. So highest paid, that's why we're seeing these level 1 and level 2 RFEs. And then lastly, and this is an issue that has come up within the last several weeks relating to parole. We've been hearing from members who are filing advanced parole applications for their clients, and the clients are present in the United States when it's filed. They then depart the United States, and the advanced parole applications are being denied. Well, there's some interpretation there that may be permissible, but this is happening even in situations where a person has a valid non-immigrant visa in hand or a valid advanced parole document that hasn't expired yet. So this practice, I think, can really be tied to, interestingly enough, the border executive order, because there was a directive in there to essentially review all of the parole programs to ensure that they are executed, within the spirit of the statute. And I think in reviewing the parole programs, then this is an outcome from that.
Wow. So there has been a lot going on, a
Yeah.
lot to unpack there. So let's sort of take some of those issues and dig into them a little bit more. Talked about the Buy American, Hire American, and its impact on H-1Bs, wage levels in particular. So how is that playing itself out? I know there's a lot of talk about increase in RFEs. So dig into that issue a little bit more. Talk about what are we seeing? What's the, what's it from your vantage point? Where is this playing out most?
Okay, so we were able to, we put out a call for examples when we first started hearing about this, and I think at last count we had close to 300 responses, which is really a lot. We put out calls for examples on a lot of different issues, and I can say with absolute certainty that that is a really high volume in terms of response rate. Most of the RFEs kind of can fall into two buckets, but it all comes back to questioning whether that level one wage is appropriate. They're either questioning whether, because there's a level one wage listed in the labor condition application, that the position is entry level and therefore isn't complex enough, or they're questioning whether the position is actually a specialty occupation. So there's more nuances to it than just that. But we haven't, the challenge right now is that we haven't really seen the decisions yet. We're starting to hear from some members who have maybe gotten some denials or some approvals. Some people are getting approvals. But we haven't seen enough yet to really determine whether there's a real pattern here, and whether we can kind of break it down to sort of give members like a real sort of some guiding light in essence to sort of deal with these things. So that's kind of where it stands right now. We have amended our call for examples to ask for people to submit their denials so we can start taking a look at them and try to start figuring that out.
So one thing you didn't mention in the list was the question of interviews, visa interviews. I know that's come up a lot before, and I know it's something we're going to dig into a little bit more as we learn more about how that's happening. So I just want to indicate to folks, we know that issue is out there. We will be following up on those kinds of issues. So on what we've talked about, as well as some of the things that we're working on, where can members go for the best resources? What are we providing, and where can they find it?
Yeah, that's great. So we have a number of resources put together for members. The first thing that I wanted to mention, just because the H-1B, the level 1, level 2 RFE issue is so hot right now, we held an audio seminar back on August 31st where our panelists really dug into these issues and kind of laid out some tips and strategies for both responding to these RFEs, but also potentially avoiding them moving down the road. So the recording for that is now available on Agora, so you can certainly access that. And as sort of a companion piece to that, we issued a very detailed practice pointer that also lays out some of these strategies for dealing with this issue. That's available on AILA.org. It's a great resource. It's got a lot of appendices with excerpts from the law, relevant memos and cases, and all kinds of things. So it's a really good resource. If you're struggling with this issue, I highly encourage you to check that out. In terms of Buy American, Hire American, there's a real desire at this stage to push back against this narrative that H-1B workers are taking U.S. jobs and undercutting wages for U.S. workers. So we've put together a resource page, a Buy American, Hire American resource page that includes things like talking points. We've put together a sample employer letter, and we really want AILA members to get out there and talk to their employer clients and encourage them to sign on to this letter and send it to members of Congress to start, again, just pushing back against that negative narrative in the H-1B space. We've also distributed a letter for chapters to do the same. So chapters can put this letter on letterhead and push it out to their members of Congress as well. In terms of we're also sort of seeing some increased activity in the worksite enforcement space.
Right.
We're hearing about more FDNS visits, but more specifically to worksite enforcement, more I-9 audits and notices of inspection being issued and things of that nature. So back in February, we held a great worksite enforcement conference, and those recordings are available as well. So if you're getting some interest from clients who want to be prepared for this new enforcement environment, then I would strongly suggest that you check out those recordings. And then don't want to forget the business book, right? The Business Immigration Law and Practice book, new edition is out and is shipping.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I know predicting the future is very difficult to do in the current environment, but if you can, give me some quick sense of where you think things are going, what might be on the horizon in terms of the issues that we're talking about here.
Okay, so I think that we are only at the tip of the iceberg, unfortunately. I think that, certainly NAFTA has been in the news. We know that negotiations or renegotiations of NAFTA have opened up. I can say that at this point, we've been doing a lot of we've been checking in with colleagues and allies in the space, and there hasn't really been any real indication that the mobility or the immigration provisions are really on the table at this point. So, I think it's kind of a wait and see when it comes to NAFTA renegotiation, but we could potentially expect some changes there. Definitely more extreme vetting, more delays at consulates, more delays potentially at ports of entry. Changes to forms. We've already started to see a lot of changes to immigration forms over the last couple of years, and that's certainly going to continue with more questions to kind of pull out the concerns that the administration has in this extreme vetting space. And I think that we could also probably see some new regulations in some of the non-immigrant categories. That's maybe a little bit farther down the line, but I think pretty much everything's on the table.
So the predictions are it's going to continue to be a bumpy road ahead. Where can members go for updates on sort of the latest information about what's happening? Where on a regular basis, if I'm an AILA member, where do I go to get this information about how these changes are coming out?
Yeah, you want to go to AILA.org. And our Immigration 2017 page is the place where we're sort of collecting all of this information. As I mentioned before, we have this Buy American, Hire American sub-page that I think is it's a little bit tighter. It's a little more focused kind of in the business space. So I think that would be a good place to look at as well. And definitely AILA 8. I mean, if when things are breaking and we're trying to push information out to members, you can count on it being in AILA 8.
AILA 8, that's a daily email. Look for it in your inbox for all that great information. Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you.
You are doing great work. Thank you for all the great work that you're doing, and I know that you'll continue to do here to keep members up to date on what's happening and continue to provide you all with the best resources that we possibly can. Again, stay tuned to AILA 8 for daily information. Keep going to AILA.org for the latest resources and information. Thank you all, and thank you, Betsy, for being here. We'll see you next time on Sidebar.